Hi, this is Kim White with the My Sexy Business Team, and I'm here with my beautiful co-host,
Kristi Bridges from One Moment Wiser.
We are at the Hope to Hope conference and so excited about this conference. This conference has come out of a place of pain, but it has been nothing but awesome for the last 4 days. We are in the fourth day, so if you missed anything, go back and watch the recordings. They have been phenomenal. We've had some amazing speakers on, an amazing wealth of knowledge that has been shared and wisdom. Oh my goodness.
Inspiration and wisdom and just practical tips. And oh, wow, you've got to go back and hear Rodney Flowers. I am still just electrified.
Our next speaker is just as awesome. And she is actually part of Kristi's family. So I'm going to let Kristi introduce her. But I am super excited she's here.
Me too. So this next person is the person who used to rock me to sleep, and the person who used to sit up with me on New Year's Eve and toast the New Year's in my grandparents' crystal with Mellow Yellow, and we had to a dozen times. This is my Aunt Debra, and she is an inspiration, just a musical genius and a powerful woman, a powerful spirit. And so I am so glad to have you here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. This is worth toasting with Mellow Yellow for.
I love it. I love it. We'll have to get some.
Do they still make it?
Hold your pinkies out.
That's right.
Well, you know what's funny is our first day of the Hope to Hope conference, you were actually in a plane traveling around because that's what you do. And one of our interviews was with Dr. Maria Katsoumanis, who had gone through a really dark time in her life. And her twin sister said, come on, get dressed. We're going to get a job. And they got jobs on an airline as flight attendants. And Dr. Maria said she threw up after every flight because she was so airsick. But it was the beginning of transformation in her life because of listening to the passengers who pour out their troubles, and she started to recognize that she wasn't the only one. Jump seat confessions. Yep. And I said, oh my goodness, I can't wait till Aunt Debbie's on here.
Even without turbulence.
I love it. So I'm thinking you probably have heard lots of jump seat confessions since you've been doing it a while.
I have. I've probably made a few myself. The way I ended up in this airline business as a flight attendant, it was really crazy for me. I had been, I had a career as a musician, had gigged, and I taught lessons at Louisville Independent School District for 25 years. And at the end of that, I felt like that chapter of my life was finished. And I worked on a series of books for the students, took some time off, a sabbatical, and then got to the point where I got bogged down in some of the web design and all that stuff that didn't have to do with the musical part. And I realized I needed to get a job. And so I started praying and asking God, what do you want me to do? I'm willing to give everything up. I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do. Just tell me. And nothing. And so I told him again, I will do everything you want me to do. Just show me what it is. And I told him the third time. And then I had a friend that got put in the hospital. And so I went to visit the friend. And while I was there, I met his mother. And she's a flight attendant. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And didn't think anything else about it. Well, I helped him after he got out of the hospital. It was right before the end of his semester, and he was supposed to graduate. So I helped him do some editing on his papers, and his mother, from gratitude, invited me to the graduation and the graduation party. So I went to the graduation, and then on the way to the party, the first time ever, the thought entered my mind, I wonder what it would be like to be a flight attendant. I mean, that's the first time in my life. And so at the party, I went into the kitchen and asked her about it. And she told me, well, we haven't hired externally in years. It's been about 8 years. While we were talking, her girlfriend walked up and she just mentioned to her, oh, Debra said she was wondering what it'd be like to be a flight attendant. And her friend said, I hear we're getting ready to hire. And the lady said, well, let us know when. That was Saturday. The next Tuesday, they opened it up for resumes for 3 hours, first time in 8 years. I was able to get my 3 hours. They accepted 10,000 resumes, and I got mine. And they called me, and I became a flight attendant. Never in my life had I ever thought about that. And when I went to the first time to get on the plane, I thought, am I going to spend my life in this small area? Because I just spent my life in the practice room for all those years. And the thing is that God, even though the area that I'm in, even though that's a small plane, I'm in his expanse. I look out the window, I look down, and so many times I've thought, God sees everything from his perspective. And yet, as we land in the plane, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. When you look out the window, and I think, he comes right down in the middle of our lives. Even though he's up there, he comes right down in the middle of our lives, and he's right there on the ground and right next to us. And while I'm on the plane, I'm right in the middle of everything that he's doing in these people's lives. I'm a little point in their lives, and I can do something for him. And it has been a huge expanse. It's a huge expanse, because when you are doing something with God and he is doing something through you, the expanse never stops. When God speaks his word, I was talking to someone, and I started explaining something I had never even thought about before. I said, when God speaks his word, it goes out, and that's why the universe is still expanding. Because when God spoke that word at creation, it just never stopped. And so that creation is still expanding the universe. And you know, his word expands our lives. His word going into someone else's life expands their life. God is all about abundance. He's all about expanding what you're doing. He's all about helping you reach out and using you to reach other people. I felt like God told me one time, you're a connector. You are a connector. What you do is you go and you make the connection between me and people. Because there are a lot of people that are in a place in their own lives that, although God's all around them, although God is trying to get their attention, although God is loving on them, they're just not connecting with him. Because they can't hear that voice that's out there. They can't see his face. They don't know what he's like. And so when we go out in whatever we're doing in our lives, and for me, it's on the plane right now, what I am is I'm the voice for God for that person. I'm the face of God for that person. And once I get that connection with them, and they start hearing what God's saying to them, they start seeing how God cares about them, then they start connecting to God. And when they connect to God, then I can just step back and let them connect to God. And with that connection with God is when the change comes in their lives. It's when their hearts are touched fully. And I've done my part. And this has happened several times on the plane. One time I was flying the A position, which is in the front of the plane. Mm-hmm. And there was a lady that came in as a pre-board. And those are the people that come in if they're in wheelchairs, or if they have a disability, or if something's going on and they need to have a little bit of extra help. And so we pre-board them. And she came on, and she was very cheerful, very lovely, lovely lady. But she repeated herself a lot, and she talked a lot. It was pleasant. but I needed to take care of other people too. So I had to divide up my time. And then while I was working in the galley, I just felt like God said, you need to pray for that lady. And so I looked around the partition, and she was asleep. And I said, well, God, I'm not going to wake her up because she probably needs to sleep. So if you want me to talk to her, I will, but you'll need to wake her up. And so during the flight, every once in a while I would look around, or I would go down the aisle taking care of people, and she was still asleep. So I got toward the end of the flight, and I looked around one more time before I was going to do my final cleanup, and she had awakened. And she was sitting by this beautiful young girl that was probably in her early 20s, and they were chatting. And so I said, okay, God, she's awake. And he's like, okay. And so I went over there, and I started asking her about what was going on, because she had mentioned a couple of things that indicated a physical condition. And I came to find out that she had had a stroke. And she started telling me about all the things Jesus had done for her, how he had enabled her to start walking again, how he had enabled her to start talking again, how he had done all of these many, many things in her life. And I was all excited about it, and the girl next to her was all excited. And then I said, is there anything else that you want Jesus to do for you? And she looked at me and she said, I want my memory back. Because there were so many things in her past that she couldn't remember. And when we get cut off from our memories, we get cut off from those people that are part of those memories. We get cut off from parts of our life that God was in, or parts of our life that we need to deal with. And so I kneeled down beside her, right in front of her, and I grabbed her hands, and I said, okay, we're going to ask Jesus to give you your memory back. And we prayed. And while I was praying, I just felt like God was giving me words to say. And I started praying that God would give her her memory back, but that it wouldn't be the way she remembered it the first time. That this time when her memory came back, she would start remembering things the way God had seen them. That she would remember the events and the circumstances the way God saw them. That she would remember those feelings and those emotions the way God saw them. That she would have God's perspective on all of that. And if you get to know me very well, you know that I cry easily. And I was crying, and she was crying and laughing at the same time. And that beautiful young girl was just crying. She had grabbed our hands, and she was praying with us, and she was crying. And this lady said, oh, I'm so thankful. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you. And she said, oh, I want to give you something for praying for me. And I said, oh, you don't have to give me anything. She said, no, I want to give you something. And she looked down, and she had several rings on her hands. They weren't expensive, but you could tell that they were small treasures that she had. And she looked down at her hands, and she said, I want to give you one of these rings. And then she said, but none of them are worth anything. But I want to give you something. And so she looked again, and she picked out the largest ring, and it was this green ring right here. Wow. And she said, I want to give you this. And I realized that she was giving this to God, and I was there to take it for his sake. And so I took that ring, and I told her, thank you so very, very much. And she was just thrilled. They got off the plane after we landed. The young girl said, you're awesome. And I realized I was hearing that for God too, because it was God that was awesome. It wasn't my idea. It wasn't my words. It wasn't my plan. It wasn't my setting this all up. It was God. And he is awesome. And then the lady hugged me, and I hugged her and hugged her. And she was still just praising God and excited. And the two of them got off the plane. And I've kept this ring with me everywhere I go. I take it with me because this is a token for God. And this is a token that reminds me that God uses me as his face. See, that's what we're supposed to do. That's what we're meant to do. When God made us in his image, he said, I want to put my face in a human flesh. I want to put my voice in a human voice box. I want to put my hands on the ends of human arms and touch human lives. And he said, and I want to show you how to do that. So I'm going to become human, and I'm going to do that. And he sent Jesus. And when we look at Jesus, we see God. He said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I only do what I see the Father doing. I only say what I hear the Father saying. And he said, now, you go out. You've been with me. You've been my disciples. You've hung around with me. You know what I'm like. You do the same thing. And he sent them out on practice runs. And then when he left, he said, now go make disciples of all nations. And that's what we do. We represent God. One morning when I was at the hotel, I was listening to some hymns, which I do a lot of times in the morning. And I'll tend to listen to one over and over and over and over again, because it just, every time I hear it, it goes a little deeper and a little deeper. And this morning I was listening to Just a Closer Walk with Thee. And I was talking to God about it as I was getting ready. And I said, God, you know, all my life I've wanted you to walk with me. And I've wanted you to be with me, and you have. So that, you know, today I just want to be with you. I want to walk with you. I just want to hang out with you and see what you're doing, what your projects are for the day. And that was the day that opened up the series of all of these events, like this, what I call the green ring story.
Okay, Debra, I found 5 events from today at 13:48, tomorrow at 13:48, at 13:30, all-day event.
Oh my gosh! I never even used Siri. I don't know what she's talking about.
Siri wants to send hope to hope.
Yes. I tell you what, God will reach anyone.
That's awesome.
That's funny.
That is.
But that was the beginning of just a breakthrough of events, like this the lady with the green ring, and I could go on and on, but I want to give you a chance to ask some questions since I've been talking nonstop.
I just hang on every word. But, you know, I still love that when you prayed for her memory to come back, and you told me this story before, but it made me cry again. Just, you know, she kept saying, oh, I forget things. I forget things. And that's what made you realize you needed to talk to her. But you
pray with
for her memory to come back. You prayed for her memory to come back with the right perspective, because we've been talking over the last few days about all these circumstances in people's lives that have been tough. And, you know, when we're first hit with something unexpected, whether it's, you know, our brother or sister just making us mad, or whether it's a major life event where our life has changed, little or big things, when we first encounter things, we react with whatever understanding we've had to date. And sometimes years later, we have more understanding, we have more awareness, we make decisions differently. And you actually asked for her memory not to just go back and remember, which might have brought back hurts and might have brought back resentments and might have brought back frustrations. You asked for her memory to come back with the right perspective. And gosh, I think we can all probably use that prayer, help me to look back at my history with proper understanding.
That's right. Because it's the way we react to what's going on as to how it's going to affect our lives. We've all met people that have been through terrible crises or terrible personal failures. And some people get up and dust themselves off and they go on. And some people crumble and struggle to get back up. And a lot of that is the judgment that we put on that memory. What does that memory say about me? What does that memory dictate about my identity? And we have to learn that that memory doesn't dictate anything about your identity. It's God who gives you your identity. And we can't listen to those memories. We have to listen to God. And we take those memories to God and we say, I know that this is how I remember it. And we know scientifically that when we revisit a memory, we're remembering our memory. We're not remembering the actual event. And so we get farther away from it. And God, this is how I remember it, but how do you see it? Now, God, what do you say about me in the middle of this memory? You could be out there and somebody's telling you, oh, you are ugly. And when you're young, they say the words. And when you're old, you just get the looks. You know exactly what it means. You are ugly. And we have to say, God, what do you say about that? And God says, they're struggling. But what I say about you is, you're beautiful. I made you in my image. I didn't make everyone to look like everyone. My image is too big for cookie cutters. I have to have billions of people to show billions of small facets of who I am. And they're all different. You have commonalities, but you are unique. You are a diamond. You are yourself. You have purpose. You have everything that I've promised you, everything that I've given you. You cannot do wrong as long as you're following me. And if you fall, a righteous man falls 7 times and he gets back up. I always help you get back up. I'm there in the middle of the fall. I'm there before it happened. Always leading you into prosperity. I'm always leading you into abundance. I'm always leading you into a purpose. My purpose, your created purpose. This is your identity. You're beautiful. You are gifted. You are in my image. And you are my child. And so in the middle of that memory, we can say, what I remember, what I was told, is what I was told. But what God's saying is the truth. And we have to make a choice. Because when we remember it, that seems very real. But what God's saying is more real. There's realities that are natural and temporal. But there's a superseding reality that is eternal. And that's God's reality. And we have to choose which one we live in. We're not living in denial, but it supersedes it. One day I was on the plane. I was looking out the window. I know this doesn't seem that big, but for a flight attendant, we almost never get to look out the window. So when I do, it's an occasion for me. And I was thinking, this is a picture of God's reality. Everything I see on earth is real. I'm not denying it. When I am walking on the earth, that ground is real. Those shoes are real. These aching knees, these are real. Everything I'm dealing with is real. Gravity is holding me down. But there's another reality that I can fly through the air on a plane.
That's impressive.
I can supersede that reality. I'm not denying it, but I'm just living by a higher law. And when we choose between what people tell us and what God tells us, we're choosing between, am I going to live according to gravity? Or am I going to live according to the law of aerodynamics? Am I going to live according to what I see? Or am I going to live according to what God says is real?
And you have a choice. You could stay on the ground and refuse to board the plane because it might be too hard, or because it might be too scary, or because it might require something of you, or because you don't know where you'll go. But you get on that plane, it's awe-inspiring. I've been flying since I was 7, and I still feel that sense of, oh my goodness, how cool is this when we take off?
I know. And you know, people for thousands of years looked up into the sky and said, I wish I could fly.
Yeah.
And in our generation, we can. And we do. You know, it doesn't matter what family you're from, and it doesn't matter what people that you know or that are around you, how much they've been limited to living on the ground. You can still fly.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your past, if you've always lived according to the law of gravity, you can still fly. And you don't have to be scared if you experience being able to fly and then you go, I had success once, but I'm scared I'm not going to do it again. Or if I get successful, I don't know if I can live up to people's expectations.
Right?
That can be more scary than failure because you got to do it again. But if you realize it was the law of aerodynamics that did it, not my flapping wings, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't me. It was the law of aerodynamics. It was living according to that law and just believing it and getting on that plane. You can do it again. It doesn't matter if there's been a failure. You can be successful. It doesn't matter if it was scary and you barely flew by the skin of your teeth. You can do that again. That can become a way of life.
And if you learn how to fly a plane, you don't start with the great big one. You start with a little one and you wobble, right?
That's right. You start right where you are. And you get up, and you go, and you fall down, and you get up, and you go, and you fall down, and you look up at God, and He's saying, come on, baby, come on. And He's got His arms out. You can take those steps. You can take those steps. And you can cry the whole way into His arms, or you can laugh the whole way into His arms, but just keep going into His arms. Keep going. Because we were meant to live for eternity. We were.
You see why I love her. Oh my goodness.
I love you too, I want to point out. I might not be like your niece, but I love you.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you, yes. There are so many, you know, nobody we talked to this week started in their tough situation yesterday, you know, and when they started in their tough situation years back, they couldn't see what today looks like. It wasn't visible. And when I'm on the ground climbing into the plane, I can't see what all of Dallas looks like or what all of Atlanta looks like. Only once I'm in there and going do I get to actually see. And then I can get closer up and actually explore a new place because I was brave enough to try.
That's right. And you can look at, you can start by looking at photographs, but it's not the same as experiencing it. And so many times as business women, as mothers, as daughters, sisters, aunts and nieces, and as Christian women, we look at photographs in the Bible and we see Jesus going from place to place, talking to people and performing miracles. But he's saying, I don't want you to just look at those photographs. I want you to come experience it. You really can't see it until you're up there, until you're with me, until you're just following along and watching me in action. That's how we learn. He doesn't say, okay, I want you to do this and this and this. Now go for it and then come back and report. That's why he left, so that he could send the Holy Spirit, so that he could go with us. See, he sent the disciples out and then had them come back and report, but he goes with us, or we go with him everywhere. And then we can chat about it while we're there. We can talk about it with him while we're there. It's amazing, the relationship that we can have with God. He's always there, but we have to connect with him. When I was growing up, I knew that worship of God was important. I knew that praise of God was important, but I had this idea of you kind of like do that so that you get him in a good mood, or he smiles extra big, and then you can sneak in those little requests and he'll be so overwhelmed that, of course, I will give you what you need. Of course, I love you because, you've been giving me all this. I'm feeling so good about myself. I know that sounds crazy, but, that's kind of a religious thing we don't ever put words to, but it's kind of in the back of that idea of God. And I've come to find out that we worship God because that puts us in a place to hear him. That puts us in a place where we can start experiencing the love that he has been pouring out on us all the time. That's just been falling off like water off a duck's back, and now it's actually coming in and drenching us. That's what we do to enter into his presence in our own experience.
Many people have talked about that gratitude and how it changes us, and whether, they may not have been talking about worshiping God, but it's the same thing. We're recognizing the good that we have and the good that we've had, and recognizing that even the challenge is actually doing good for us we would not have done for ourselves. And it does. Gratitude, whether you believe in Jesus or not, gratitude has been proven to just change your whole dynamic and how much you can overcome.
It does, because it starts bringing things to you instead of sending them away. The gratitude starts pulling that success toward you. It starts pulling those people that can help you. It starts pulling those clients that can help support you. It brings it to you. And one of the things
out of yourself and out where you can notice them coming.
Exactly. And gratitude about what God has done for us includes speaking what he's done for us. God, I thank you that you've made me righteous. I thank you that you love me. I thank you that the past is gone. The future is yet to come, but I'm living in your eternal presence right now, in this eternal present time zone. I thank you that you are taking care of me. I thank you that there have been a lot of times where I said, God, I thank you that I've never had to live without a roof over my head. I've never had to skip a meal because I just couldn't pay for one, or that food was not available. I thank you for all of these things. These are things in my life. I thank you that you give me work. I thank you that you give me people to talk to. I thank you that you've given me Kristi as my niece. Blessings upon blessings. That's a really important part. And Kristi, what you said, it's true. whether you believe in God or not, these are principles that are built into this universe. The principle of reciprocation. When you love people, they will love you in return. When you do good to them, they will do good to you in return. And it may not be that particular person, but somebody else will do that. I remember one time thinking that the best way I can love, show my mother love, is to show children love. Because what I'm doing is giving back what she gave to me, giving that back to someone else. So
years.
I did, and I love those kids. I just went to one of my students. I taught her through middle school and high school, and I got a call from her a couple of weeks ago. I went to her wedding. She just graduated from college. And when you're teaching kids, you don't physically touch them. You don't say certain things. But at the wedding, we hugged. Probably the first time it was okay to hug. And we hugged, and she said, I just love you. And I said, I know, I've always loved you. And we finally got to say that. Yeah. Because it was finally in a situation where it was a proper thing. It was acceptable.
But how neat that it was noticeable because of your care for her, because of your guidance. And I know I have your practice book, so I know how encouraging you are to people who are learning something that you make look just effortless and magical. And you're so encouraging, and here's where you are. And here's, where you can be, but here's where you are. And here's just one little baby step to do. And here's just one little way you can be more self-aware. And hey, listen for this and try this. You do things in such gentle, but really fun steps. And I think, God kind of does that with us, but you've taken that ability to demonstrate compassion and love without ever having to say, hey, I love you, until the day she gets married and she's a grown up and not your student. You guys can be like, I've always been on your side. And she's like, yeah.
Right. It's amazing. It's amazing what God gives you. I never had any children of my own. It just never happened. But God gave me children. God always supplies. He always supplies in abundance. And with the practice books, I felt like I was a good teacher. And I look back and I was a pretty good teacher. But there was a point in my teaching where I was thinking about the Holy Spirit and the way he works in lives, because I was thinking about, God, you're so lucky you can just get inside of them and help them. I'm on the outside. I can't get in them and help them, And I said, show me how to teach the way you teach. Show me how to do that the way you do that. And that was the beginning of those practice books of how do you encourage? How do you do it? And it all comes back really to, you start with that identity of who you are and who God says you are. Some of these children, you have to just say, you are a musician. Therefore, you're learning to play a musical instrument. If they spend their lives trying to learn to play a musical instrument in order to become a musician, if you've ever done that, you know that you will spend your life until you die to become a musician, because you hear all the things that you can't quite express yet, and you feel all the things that you can't quite get across yet in that music. But if you start off with, I'm a musician, therefore I am playing this music, I'm learning to play this instrument, then all you're doing as a musician is starting with that little embryo seed and still sprouting and growing and flowering and putting out seeds and reproducing, and it goes on and on. If you're in business,
I have to stop you just for a second because you and Kristi are privy to information that like the people listening don't have a clue. Tell us about the practice books. Like what is the practice books? Because you guys are talking about it, but no one knows what you're talking about in that instant.
And they're really exciting. Okay, so yes, let's back up and start from that foundation.
How do I rewind? Oh, okay.
I love it.
While I was teaching, I realized that I could give these kids everything they needed for 30 minutes, and that was it. And then they had a whole week to forget everything I ever said to them. And then come back and we would do it again. And I realized that they needed somebody in that practice room with them to help them. I can't get inside. I can't go home with them. Their parents don't want to feed me at night. You know, I can't be there and help them practice every step. So I started developing a practice planner that would show them, that would help guide them and help them learn to self-guide from lesson to lesson, to work on how to put into practice what you've just had in a lesson, how to notice where you are in the week if you are actually doing it, or if you are actually listening to yourself, or if you're actually stopping and making corrections that needed to be corrected. And then at the end of the week, to look back over the week and say, okay, what questions do I have? What came up that I need to ask about? How do I feel about this? And then you take that with you to the next lesson. And so there's a continuity in between the lessons. That practice planner became a planinizer, where you had the planning part and the organizing part, because they're both very, very important. And I started seeing, oh my goodness, if they could do this with their schoolwork, if they could do this with their life, if they could do this with setting up a business where they can have a point every week where they stop and evaluate and check their course and make sure that they're going in the direction that they're needing to go, and then start back up again, a fresh start over and over. We all want that. We all want a fresh start. And so that became a planinizer. And then I started working on some other tools that they could use in that practice. So it was became Fantabulous Music Practice. Is what those books are.
Music practice. And it is so energetic. And I'm sorry, I think I just ran over you. It's so energetic, and it does exactly what she was talking about, helping them realize they are a musician and nurturing the things that a professional musician actually does on a daily basis, and the things a professional musician listens for and tries for. And it's beautiful. I really enjoy it.
Well, you know, and these kind of tools can be used in any kind of business. And you can take these ideas and set up your own tools for your business too. And at the beginning, it's just to learn the skills. And then later on, it's to hone the skills. And later on, it's to pick and choose which skills need to be used where. And then to evaluate, and then to set new courses once you have reached certain goals. Then you can set new goals. So it's a perpetual one that can grow with your own growth.
She loves her planner, and she is the queen of that goal setting, planning kind of thing. Every year she gets one of those great bigs where she plans everything. I'm telling your story.
No, I love the concept because that creates momentum, and it creates a way to things that, you know, that can take you places you can't go doing 30 minutes a week.
Yeah. And it takes you, it creates a lifestyle. You know, we see these big goals we want to reach. And if we're constantly looking way out here, then we feel like, oh, there's never any way. I'm never going to get there. I'll try again next week. But if we have those little habits that require a little bit of work every single day, then pretty soon we're up here looking back and going, "Whoa, that was."
Exactly. Because even when you're going flying through the clouds, in order to get things done, you land and you live in the real world. I mean, you live in this world, you live in the eternal world. Both of them are side by side. There's two dimensions of your life. And so you have to have the big picture and you have to have the small details. Yeah. It's so very, very important.
Where can they connect with you though? Where can they get with you to get more information about your planners or plannonizer.
The best way to do that is to Facebook me personally right now, and to check there. There are I had a couple of copies that Amazon had, but they may still have a couple of copies. But I've got copies for myself that I can always ship out. Okay. So the best way would be on Facebook.
Be part of the beginning of something amazing, you guys. And this isn't a sales conference, right? Mm-hmm. We're just sharing hope with you. But each person that you've enjoyed has had wonderful things to give.
And Miss Connie said that she'd already posted it. She's already on top of it.
She is amazing.
So I appreciate you coming on today so very much. And I hope that, I hope everybody listening will go and look it up and check it out, because getting where you're going is very important to have a plan and to get organized and to hone your skills. I love your whole list of things.
Yes.
I'll have to go back and listen and write down the list.
I do want to say something. You mentioned that you had been working on some things and you got kind of bogged down in the web thing. And, we've heard that from a few people this week, that there were areas that they got kind of bogged down, and instead of doing the thing that they were passionate about, they're doing this crummy drudgery stuff. And so we've just keep encouraging people to collaborate.
Yes, because
yes, that's so important. That would have made all the difference at that time of my life. It would have made all the difference. But even when you're saying, I wished, you can just say, okay, now I know. Now I can go get collaboration. I don't have to sit here and go back and say, oh, I did this wrong. That's information now. It's not this big emotional thing. It's information that's helpful, and you can go on and do.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, and I love getting to see you. I haven't seen you in. Has it been a year?
It was 2016, so it's been a couple of years.
Oh my goodness.
We got to do another conference. Oh wait, we're doing one.
Well, keep perpetuating.
So thank you.
Thank you. I love you. Are we allowed
love you both?
Well, this is Kim White with the My Sexy Business Team
and Kristi Bridges with One Moment Wiser.
We are at the Hope to Hope conference, and we'll be back in just a few minutes for the next session.
That's right.
So, thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.